Today, how to develop that team at a record rate. Whether you've got an admin, whether you got a whole team of big brains, how do we make them even bigger brain as fast as possible so that you are not only boosting your own firm by raising the bar for all of them, but boosting them, boosting their career prospects, boosting other human beings, which may be the very best part of running a firm. Also, because it's a Q&A Friday, I'm going to share my thoughts on ChatGPT's deep research, as well as Perplexity's deep research. Follow me on social. If you're on my newsletter this week, you know how bullish I am on research tools for tax right now. Wow, has researching anything tax related changed so much in the last 45 days. And I'll share my process for hiring an admin. Mentioned that I just hired an admin recently. I'll spill the beans on what that process looks like for me. Come on in, gang. It's a Q&A Friday on Jason on Firms. Coming to you this week from Melbourne, Australia. And boy, if you've been tuning in, it has just been an audio-visual roller coaster. We had an episode where the camera was wildly out of focus the entire time. I apologize to your eyeballs. Had another episode where the mic wasn't recording. Apologies to your earballs. But today, everything's going to be great, and I'm sure that everything, as I'm saying this, is working perfectly. Hang on, gotta check something? Okay, nope, that is working. Okay, we're good. Question that's related to a story I shared a couple weeks ago about a person I had on my team who came in with not a ton of career prospects and very quickly left a few years later with loads of career prospects. And I ranted at length about how that was a bad decision. Here's the question. By the way, this was just an email that somebody sent me. Oftentimes I'm slow, but I will almost always respond to you. Here's the question. I love the podcasts and all the technical stuff, but would find it helpful if you spent a few podcasts on how exactly you got your team to this higher away level. So this is talking about how people from my team were getting poached even 2.5 years ago. They worked for Jason. And because we were growing people at such a fast rate, like you have the risk of people leaving. So does that mean you shouldn't pour that much investment into them? So this is the higher away level they're talking about in the question. For someone like myself, I spend a lot of time wondering if I'm doing things right, and a flow for how to develop competency inside my own firm would be very valuable. I'm telling you, man, there's nothing better. It is the best part of running a firm than building up other human beings, leaving them in a better place than you found them. That's a weird way to put it. Okay, first off, I actually got this one from modern philosopher Alex Hormozy. First off, you got to remember that your dreams and your aspirations need to be big enough for the dreams of other people to fit inside of them. And oftentimes, the whole, I just can't find good people is a product of people not being able to see your vision, your dreams, see like anything interesting in what you're doing. If the way you're serving clients is not different to the way anybody else is doing it, if you don't have anything to say, then it's kind of hard to get excited about what you're doing. And this is why oftentimes the more visionary leaders, like the big kind of audacious, ambitious folks, they will be an attractor to other folks that are wired the same way. This is probably the best thing that I could do in my accounting firm. My real strength was I'm very much, by definition, like a visionary style leader because I'm wildly incompetent at actually getting anything done. I drive my team nuts because I have too many ideas, but I can at least paint a picture that people can get excited about. And if you have really capable folks and they always leave, this is probably why. Is they don't see their own universe fitting within your universe. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's just a thing to be aware of. There's a version of this where you have ambitious people that work for a firm and they don't see a path up that they're excited about. And it may be because they may actually have more ambition than their boss or than that ecosystem will allow for them. It's particularly an issue in larger, more structured firms where there just isn't all that much room for growth or growth is arbitrarily slow or capped. But in a smaller firm, know that you don't have to have humongous, wildly ambitious dreams. But the trade-off of that is folks that do, they're probably going to move on. Now, second thought here. How to enable that growth? And what is that growth? How is it even measured? Growth, to me, comes down to the velocity at which people evolve through tasks. So think about you or think about a person on your team. Think about all the tasks that you have on your plate today. If you're doing the exact same tasks 12 months from now, you haven't grown. Like if you want the most tangible version of what growth looks like, it's what you show up and do. Are there other types of growth of like your mindset and all that? Like, for sure. But I'm worried about where the rubber meets the road. Because when it comes to building my team, me being able to pay them more, them being able to learn that next thing, that only happens if the things that they're doing are changing and evolving. And so earlier in my managerial career, I should say, I'd be able to talk with folks. I'd be able to get them excited about a path. And we talk about like, hey, here's what I totally think you're capable of, what we could do over the next 3 years. And then you circle back with them 6 months down the road and you're like, how's that coming along? And they're like, well, I'm kind of just doing all the same stuff because I don't have anybody that can do this stuff for me. And I don't know what the next tasks are that will take me closer to that. And that's when I realized, oh, okay, like it's one thing for me to lay out this roadmap for them, but unless we actually have the other human beings and the processes and the change management structure to support their actual day-to-day duties changing, then it's hard to then point the finger at them and say, why are you not growing? And this is what got me to a team structure that is 1000% about support. It's about everybody on the team having someone who can support them. And this started at the top with me. I was in an 80-year-old firm and I had an assistant. And I was the first partner in the history of that firm to have an assistant. What an absolute snowflake. Are you kidding me? You can't handle your own stuff like everybody else? The truth was, there were a lot of other people that did need an assistant, and we were all paying the price for it because there's this weird sort of like virtue signaling and not being willing to admit defeat or not wanting to be the type of person who needs an assistant. Gang, the sooner you can get over that, the better for everyone. Because when you have an assistant, not only are you creating an opportunity for that assistant that wouldn't otherwise exist, but you have more of yourself to give to the rest of your team. And that helps everybody. It is so beneficial to get over that. Now, that super red pilled me to like, oh, dang, I see my assistants now getting really freaking good because I'm pushing a lot of high level stuff to them. I see I'm getting good because I'm getting to focus on the high level stuff. This is good for everybody. Well, wouldn't this also extend to my team? Because my senior folks who are very good technically, what they suck at is delegation. That's not a thing you just roll out of the bed knowing how to do. And so who do they have to delegate things to? I need to explicitly make that path as clear as possible so that they can't come back to me and say, no, I'm just stuck with doing these tasks. The reality is, my best, most senior technical folks, I want them working on the hard stuff, not cherry picking 1040s out of the drawer, gang, okay? Don't be one of those. I'm not paying you umpteen $1,000 a year to manage client requests and send clients reminders for documents that you need, but that is what most firms do. And until you give everybody in your firm a release valve, someone who can support them, that can be the right-hand person, then they're not going to learn the skill of delegation and they're not going to have the opportunity of evolving their own tasks to something more valuable. Very beginning of my career, I sat just across a small room from a very senior tax guy. Bless his heart, I was 19 years old, so many problems with this. The first tax return I ever got was 3 years of C Corp returns for this company that hadn't filed them forever and didn't really have a set of books to speak of. It was a winery. And they thought, this will be a good way for the new person to cut their teeth. Let me tell you, I had some questions. And this blessed soul that sat 6 feet away from me, they were a tremendous resource for me. There's like a symbiosis here that is so good for both sides of that equation. In my case, it wasn't. I got much more out of this than he did, but very explicitly outlining, here's a senior, here's a junior, you are going to work together, and it doesn't just have to be one-to-one. You could have somebody that supports multiple people. But having a very clear roadmap there accelerates the rate at which the senior person can push work down to the junior person, which then accelerates the junior person's growth unbelievably, but then also keeps your senior people focused on senior people things. Now, to really juice this up, pull an admin into the mix, because increasingly admins can handle document gathering, following up with clients. Hire admins that are great people that can be an advocate for the client, that clients look forward to talking to, and you don't have to feel bad then about sicking the admins on the client to go track down that thing that you need. Before you know it, your admins are super, super capable because they understand like what these things actually mean. They understand when they did the 8879 wrong and they have to fix it, or they didn't get the spouse's signature or whatever. Like all the ways that can go wrong, they learn from that. And before you know it, you have these admins that are super capable and actually starting to look a little more like technical people. The rate at which you can move these tasks through the skill tree inside of your accounting firm, this is the same as the rate at which you can grow people. My personal growth skyrocketed when I had an assistant. The same thing happens for everybody on your team when you give them an outlet for where they can move those tasks. Consider your incentive structure as well. What's in it for the team to grow? Can they actually see a path to something that's exciting for them? Because that's often why people will leave, is they don't see a 3-year timeline that they can get excited by. And I will say my generation and younger, they are more impatient about that than others. We're over the notion of, quote, putting in your years, because why should that be necessary if you're a high achiever? So make sure that you can paint a picture that is something that they can be excited by. But this whole model of everyone supporting everybody else, it starts with you. It starts with your ability to delegate, to provide a model of what it looks like to work alongside somebody else, to bring them up in the process of enabling you to get to higher value stuff. When you set that example, everybody else sees that it's okay. And it doesn't become a hierarchy thing. It becomes an opportunity for everybody thing, because it makes everybody better. And then before you know it, the people that you're passing down tasks to, they're passing tasks down to somebody else because now what they're doing looks a little higher level. But so much of this starts at the top. It starts with you, and starts with you painting a picture of a job that someone else could see themselves doing someday. Because even in small firms, winning inside of a small firm, it's still a partner track of sorts. Like, what is the ceiling of where you can go in an accounting firm? As much as we don't like the traditional partner track and kind of the toxicity and chest beating nature of that, even in a small firm, that's the ceiling. And so if they look at you and you are just running yourself ragged, not having a good time, why would we expect anybody else to be excited about that? Like, that is the path that you're implicitly putting in front of your most ambitious people to say, if you really nail things, this is where you could be someday. Nobody's going to get excited about that. Some people will, but they shouldn't. And even those people who are willing to do the suffering thing, show them that you don't have to, so that then they don't have to. Because you know who's going to pay the price for that? Man, it's their family, it's their kids. That is the legacy I want to leave. Not being this super sweaty person that did this stuff at all costs, but the person that illustrated a more balanced approach, so that the people that came along after me are like, no, there's a way to do this that's still perfectly healthy. So if you're thinking about how do I upskill my team faster, think, what is the path of tasks from every member of your team to someone else who can support them? How do I accelerate the rate at which that stuff gets delegated? Because a person's abilities, there's a whole lot of proxies for what somebody's capable of, but the very best proxy is, what are the things that they're doing every single day, and how do we make a plan for those tasks to continue to evolve? Thanks for the question. It's a good question, and I'm glad you're asking that question, because I think there is nothing more important than how we take care of the people that we employ. This episode is sponsored in part by TeamUp. You know the greatest proof of something that actually works? People are doing it. People are coming back and doing it more. I got a report here from the last few weeks of the projects that TeamUp's been working on. By the way, TeamUp, they help you hire talented accountants in the Philippines directly. You work directly with them. Can I just run you through like half of the things they got in the pipeline right now? Firm in Hawaii, hiring a bookkeeper. Returning firm, they're coming back for more. New firm in California, hiring a senior accountant. New firm in Australia. I'm so sorry. Oh, what was that? I'm so sorry. Hiring a tax accountant. Firms in Florida and Texas, hiring senior tax accountants. They are returning firms. BC, a returning firm from BC, hiring a junior bookkeeper. Arkansas firm, hiring an executive assistant. New firm from Colorado, hiring a senior accountant. You get the idea. Every flavor of accountant you can imagine. A whole bunch of firms that are coming back, which tells me they've done this before and it worked. That's what I did. I started with one and then immediately hired like 3 more folks in the Philippines over the course of 2 or 3 months. If you're looking to work directly with folks in the Philippines, TeamUp's got the recruiters that can help you do it. Check out the link in the show notes to learn more. This episode is sponsored in part by Carbon, the practice management system. Something that Carbon does that I love is they will literally tell you the stuff that they are working on and have like a big ta-da event at the end of the year to announce like, hey, here's the stuff we're about to ship and here's what we're prioritizing for the following year, which that level of confidence and transparency, I like it. In fact, in the process of doing that, they probably actually get a lot of really useful feedback around like, okay, here's what I like about that. Here's what I don't like about that. Whereas if they didn't put that stuff out ahead of time and kind of just did this big ta-da, they would have less information from their users than they have by like kind of involving them in that conversation. They did at the end of 2024, announced a whole bunch of stuff. Honestly, all the Carbon nerds, and Carbon just has some real enthusiasts. They all turned up to that webinar, and it's like the highlight of the year. They got the popcorn out. They're like, ooh, what are they gonna announce? And a bunch of people did get excited, and they ran out to LinkedIn, and they're like, oh, I'm so excited for this and that and that and that. I mean, props to Carbon for building that level of fandom in your software tool, but also people, it's accounting firm software. Let's get some perspective. Probably not a lot of tools in your stack with that level of transparency. If you're in the market for practice management system, Carbon is one of those tools you kind of have to consider. It's like on the have to look at list. Learn more about Carbon. Check out the link down in the show notes. 2 other questions because it's a Q&A Friday. Hey, you got a question? Pop it down in the comments, buddy. Shoot me a DM, shoot me an email. Okay, thoughts on ChatGPT's deep research and Perplexity's identically named deep research. So a couple of weeks back, ChatGPT released deep research. It is available on the $200 a month Pro plan and does some real big brain stuff around hard problems. It can go search the web. It can crawl through a big pile of documentation that you give it. Basically, it spends upwards of 10 minutes reasoning through all the information that it can find, doing some kind of agentic stuff where based on what it's finding, it will change the course through which it like goes through additional materials and whether or not it goes back and looks for more information or goes to the web to see if it can find any more concrete answers. It will work on this for upwards of 10 minutes and then produce like a report, a paper of upwards of 10 pages. And you have a whole bunch of truly PhD level people that are reporting back and saying, this is producing PhD level work in 10 minutes that would normally take a human upwards of a week. Now, there are always exceptions to the rule in how people react to this. But across the board, people are saying this has been a much more positively received technical, product than we've seen yet by a long shot. Now, you and I, we don't really do PhD level stuff. And so for us, in many cases, this is going to be overkill because what you don't want is a problem that's not overly complex and then AI giving you a 10-page answer. And now it's like you're grading AI's homework. That's a little more than you need it to be. Now, this is a peek into the future of agentic like AI doing big meteor work for you on its own. We're going to circle back to that. But an alternative to this that might be better and is probably a better place to start is now Perplexity's deep research. If you haven't used Perplexity, it has been the leading kind of Google alternative for over a year now. And they released a version of deep research where you can do 5 of these searches or researches, whatever you want to call them, per day on the free plan, and they take 2 to 3 minutes to complete. Testing that I've done around technical tax subjects, it's so good. It is, it's the best tax research product there has ever been, period. Now, will it do 100% of the research that you ever need to do? Probably not, because there's still going to be research that's reliant upon you forming your own opinion or you disagreeing with some of the source material. That is, publications versus actual, code sections or regs or something like that. There will always be those gaps where someone can come in and make a different determination, but that's not 95% of research. 95% of research is applying a client-specific situation and looking for the specific outlining of that scenario in, the 3 different bits of literature that mention it. And this can be so time consuming because the nature of tax research is you think you found the answer and then 7 pages later, there's an exception. And then there was a court case that contradicted that. Like that's so much work to find all of those things. But the notion that an AI can go out and look across a huge number of sources that either you provide or it goes out and it figures out for itself, but then also pulls in like expert commentary from other sources that while not being authoritative in the traditional sense, I still want to know about them. It still adds to the considerations. If somebody really, really smart is saying one thing that I don't have on my radar, I still want to know about that. The volume of information that it can go through in such a quick amount of time, it's unbelievably good. I should say before I forget, Perplexity, there's no plan of Perplexity that does not train on your prompts. And so this is what we talk about with AI tools. Is the only difference to AI tools from other types of tech is to watch out for whether or not your prompts are trained into the model, whether they save those prompts. Perplexity does. There's no way around that. All that means you don't put any client names, you don't put anything identifying to a client or to yourself into those prompts. That's it. And for tax research, you don't need to. That's a pretty easy one. It's not like ChatGPT, the team plan specifically, where it is much more secure. But for tax research, again, not a big deal for me. Who does this impact? It impacts everybody. I mean, it impacts, normally you would throw a kind of a light project like that to somebody else to work on if you're a senior, and then you come back and you review their work. Now you chuck it to an AI tool, and in 3 minutes you have something that is as high quality, if not higher quality, than what you would have gotten from a junior or a staff level person. If you are a junior or staff level person, oftentimes those research projects got delegated up to where you had to push that to a senior to get to an answer for you. You now have access to much higher quality answers much faster. And a really sneaky, awesome thing about this is that these reasoning models now, so another example of a reasoning model is the O3 mini model inside of ChatGPT. Perplexity's Deep Research uses DeepSeek R1, the open source Chinese model that was released a month or so ago, but it is their own self-hosted version of it. So when you see all the security issues with DeepSeek, that is on DeepSeek's platform. Like if you go to their equivalent of ChatGPT and you run the model on their tool, big time security issues with DeepSeek there. But this is Perplexity running the open source model on their own servers. So a very different thing. But these reasoning models are now showing their chain of thought, the sequence that they go through, reasoning from your question down to the very end, the answer. And it is so humanizing. It gives you so much confidence because you can see them thinking through the problem the same way that you would. And even if you don't agree with the final destination of where they ended up, you can at least see the logic that got them there. And you can choose to get off the bus halfway through rather than just having this black box that just spits out an answer and you're like, well, now I got to go review the whole thing to know if it's even right. That chain of thought, being able to see that's actually a really big deal for trusting it for research purposes. This may be, I mean, people always talk about what do you actually use AI for? And the hard thing is it's so like use cases are so client and engagement and your issue specific. Like AI doesn't have this sort of iPhone camera app sort of killer use case for accountants. Honestly, this might be it. Like this is the single biggest thing probably, maybe next to like meeting transcript tools, possibly the single biggest thing I could put my finger on and just show you in 30 seconds. This will fundamentally change how you research anything. Is tremendously powerful. And that only works if the tool actually works, if it actually does a good job of it, and it does. It is so good and getting better by the day. We have more models coming just in the next couple of weeks. From xAI, from Anthropic, a new family of Claude models, supposedly. They may be out by the time this episode goes live. So the research tools are just going to keep getting better at a really, really quick rate. And that's so exciting. Today, they are tremendous assistance to us, but we are very close to them working more autonomously and tackling more long-term tasks for us that aren't just kind of done in an instant. So this same technology where right now it's going out to the web and pulling a bunch of information to do research for us. This is the same technology that we will give a stack of 80 pages of a financial statement or tax return and a bunch of work papers to. And it will take that time to go and reason through all those things step by step and try to identify any issues. It's the exact same tech. And in our application, maybe that means that the app, first goes out and pulls instructions for forms or whatever supporting rules that it needs. But it is the same thing that we're seeing now for research. This is the beginnings of cutting AI loose to prep something, to review something. And if you think about this the way that we're thinking about research right now, like the research is very, very good. And right now we work with it and then we verify the output. But it's going to get to the point where it does this better than humans do. Like that is just a matter of time. And we're shockingly close to that, which means it's no longer an assistant. It then becomes a decision engine. It makes the decision, and that decision is implemented in the workflow. We can already see research getting there. So by extension, if prep ends up going the same direction, if review ends up going the same direction, there's going to be a day when it does it and we review it. There's going to be a day where it does it and it does it better than us, or it does it better than our team members do. And then it just becomes a part of workflow. It is something that kicks off when a project enters a certain status and it runs off and it does that and it takes 10 minutes or 12 hours or whatever it is, and you come back and it's done. I mean, if there's a reason to play with deep research right now, it is to give you a peek into that window. That is something that is closer on the horizon than I thought it was 2 months ago. It's really, really exciting stuff. It is really impactful stuff. Like, I implore you, go create a Perplexity account, click the little box to enable deep research, and throw a really hard technical problem at it. And if you want, upload supporting documentation, point it to a specific URL for source material, or let it go and try and find that stuff on its own. Always be clear about what the source material ought to be. So like, IRS 2024 rules, something like that. Get specific so it doesn't go out and pull old stuff or stuff from the wrong jurisdiction. And then let me know how it works for you. Drop a comment. Like, it's really exciting. And I'm extremely excited for the same tech to be applied to specific client engagements. Don't do that today in Perplexity because you've got the data training issues with the model. But this is exactly what this is going to look like. Cutting AI loose to do these kind of longer time horizon tasks. And that's wild. And it's close. This episode is sponsored in part by Cloud Accountant Staffing, who helps you find super talented accountants in the Philippines. Boy, is 2025 going to be the year of the Philippines? Like, it's not even just an accounting thing. I have talked to like so many people in other industries lately where they're like, yeah, no, we've started picking up people in the Philippines. Just the whole trend of like folks in the Philippines working for Western companies, that like has become so normalized now. I was talking with a listener of the podcast the other day, completely unprompted. They're like, yeah, no, this was a good idea. I changed this and that. And I kind of finally got off my butt and started hiring people in the Philippines. And I hired like 3 people with Cloud Accountant Staffing just last month. Holy smoke. First of all, chill out, guy. Second of all, what took you so long? Third of all, what's taking you so long, okay? It's the same thing I did. I made one hire and I'm like, okay, this is actually working really well. I'm gonna make some more hires. This is not me just shilling wares for people that do placements. Actually, I guess that's technically exactly what this is, but it's also exactly what I did. It worked really well. A lot of listeners who have started doing this, I've heard super, super positive things from. They're still human beings. It's still managing people, so it still sucks in many ways. But Cloud Accountant Staffing is gonna make it as easy as possible for you. You're gonna explore that. Check out the link to learn more about CAS down in the show notes. Hey, quick word from one of today's sponsors. Me, yes. I run a community, Realize, that is for accounting firm owners. And Realize is kind of the secret behind how I've done all of my content and been able to like financially turn thought leadership into a business. About 100 firm owners in there. Realize is a systematic way to build connections with other peer firm owners. It's not a framework for how to run a firm. It's a way to introduce you to other super cool firm owners. Right now, we're putting together small groups so you can have a group of like 5, 6, 7 other firm owners just like you that you meet with every single month, run very similar firms. Having this for me totally transformed firm running. My North Star, like my goal for you coming into this group is to make a new best friend, somebody that runs a firm, because that was what I needed in my journey. The whole community is built around that. It's called Realize. Link down in the show notes if you want to learn more. Last thing, a few people asked what my process was for hiring an admin since I recently did that. It's the same as it is for hiring anyone I've ever hired. I super rely on trial days. So basically I build a half-day schedule of tasks that I have them run through. It's a little bit of a time crunch, so I'm also assessing how quickly they can get through things, how clearly they can communicate along the way. If there are any red flags throughout the process around potential communication hiccups, showing up late, stuff like that, that's it. Like with that tiny like sample set of data like that, I have to assume that that is the norm for them, because every time that I thought that was the exception and I let them talk me into that, I immediately realized like, no, this is a bigger problem that I should have paid more attention to. So I pay really close attention to stuff like that. Those trial days are a little bit open-ended, where it's like, I'm not going to tell you how to unzip a folder. Like, I want to make sure that that's a thing you can do yourself. I'm not going to tell you how to install Slack or Loom or something like that. If you require that level of hands-on, then I want to know that right now, and it means you're probably not a fit for what I'm doing. Specifically when it comes to admins, if you ever try to hire an admin, you know you get a tremendous volume of people, a lot of whom just aren't super qualified for the job. And so admins, that is a bigger lift job. to do that hire. It may actually be an argument for pulling in a recruiting group because admins like that, in my experience, those just require a higher volume of going through resumes and a higher volume of test days and all that. I can tell you in my case, we found somebody we thought was super good, pulled them into the team, and then I fired them at the end of that week. So take none of my advice, but I will say hiring admins, I think is a little more of a crapshoot than hiring like tax or accounting professionals. In my experience, it is a little more across the board. In hindsight, could we have foreseen some of the issues that we ended up having? There were a little bit of communication issues up front, and then everything was great. We thought it was fine, but when it came down to it that week, I'm like, why do I always do this? Whenever there's like even a small issue and you're like, no, I'm sure it was nothing, it ends up being a thing. And so I was kind of kicking myself for not paying closer attention to that. And so we're back out to run that process again. I will say the second time it's easier because you've already got the trial day all set up. You've already got your SOPs are tippy top and you've got the tasks you can pull them in on day one. But this is just a very real part of hiring. Like if you've ever gone through trying to hire somebody for months and then you get them on board and then you realize 3 months into it, this isn't the person. I mean, there are very few things as demoralizing as that in running a firm. And I think we just have to be realistic about how most people, I mean, oftentimes they're probably not going to work out. And that's not a reason to shortcut things. I mean, you do want to improve the process every single time, and every person, I mean, they'll find in some way or another a way to kind of break your system. And so it has to continue to adapt. But there's so much value in resilience and enthusiasm for going after the right people, because it is the people that will dictate whether or not your firm is successful. And there's very few things. I mean, finding the next better client and finding the next better person, like those are the most important things you can do for your firm. A lot of times that just takes a level of stamina with other humans that can be really hard to maintain sometimes. So the admin stuff was frustrating. Try not to be too down about it. It's part of the process. You hope that next one is the one that's going to stick with you for, what's a long time to have someone these years? 5 years? People just aren't loyal like they used to be. That's my process. By and large, the same process I used for hiring accountants as well. What a week, gang. Hey, thanks for coming and hanging with me. We're going to be back next week. I don't know if we'll be in Australia then or if we'll be in New Zealand. But you know what? If you tune in on Monday, you can find out for yourself, okay? You got any questions, thoughts on AI research stuff? Drop them down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.